Today, we're digging into a book with a title that it stops you in your tracks. Why the Poor Don't Kill Us. It's a really provocative question, right? And the author's journey to find an answer starts somewhere pretty shocking, in the middle of a tragedy that uncovers a deep, deep human mystery.
So, picture this. It's January 26, 2001. A huge earthquake has just shattered Gujarat, India. 20 hours later, the author is standing on a pile of rubble that used to be a home. And get this, beneath his feet, a man's wife and children are trapped, but they're still alive. The author is just completely speechless. But the man whose entire world has just collapsed, he calmly steps in to give the author these incredibly detailed directions to a medical camp. That surreal, quiet endurance, right in the face of absolute horror, that is the mystery we're exploring today.
And yeah, that single experience leads directly to the book's central question. It's not just about that one man's unbelievable calm. It's about a much bigger pattern of tolerance in the face of unimaginable hardship and inequality. So seriously, why isn't there more rage? Why isn't there some kind of violent revolt?
Now, to even begin to answer that, we've got to be clear on who we're even talking about. The author argues that being poor isn't just a number in a bank account. No, it's a fundamentally different state of being. I mean, the author draws this incredibly stark contrast. For the middle class, feeling poor might mean you can't afford a luxury resort, or you're being priced out by the new rich. But for the people he's writing about, we're talking about a world where your children can die from a simple fever, where men known as rat miners literally crawl into tiny, dangerous crevices to dig for coal, a world where young boys drop dead during a fitness test just for a chance at a police job. The two realities, they're not even on the same planet.
And if you want to put a number on it, well, the author points to an official government definition. In an Indian city, if a whole family of 5 can spend more than 7,500 rupees a month, that's about $90, they are officially considered not poor. Think about that. That is the razor-thin line we are talking about.
And this leads us to the absolute core of his theory. He suggests that the poor operate by a completely different set of rules, almost like an ancient code of endurance that's been passed down through generations. For them, a catastrophe isn't some shocking once-in-a-lifetime event. It's their constant state of existence. Okay, so that's the theory. But how does it actually play out in real life? The author gives us these incredibly powerful portraits of what this endurance looks like, including one of the most haunting stories to come out of modern India. This quote introduces the story of a man named Dana Mashi. The image being described here, it became famous all over India. It's a symbol of a reality that, frankly, most people would rather not see. So Dana Maji's wife died of tuberculosis in a government hospital. He had no money to hire a car to take her body back to their village. The hospital, they refused to help him. So what did he do? He wrapped his wife's body in a cloth, put her on his shoulder, and just started walking the 60 kilometers home with his sobbing daughter trailing beside him. This is a perfect, heartbreaking illustration of the author's point. Maji wasn't surprised. He didn't rage against the injustice. He just did what he had to do. For him, the system being unkind wasn't a shock. It was just a fact of life, like the rain or the sun. There was no single villain to blame. And let's go back to that earthquake for a minute. In the days after the disaster, people weren't just grieving. They were walking up to photojournalists and asking them to take pictures of their dead relatives. Why? Because they needed proof for a death certificate. The author calls this feral pragmatism, this immediate, almost shocking focus on bureaucracy and survival, even in the absolute darkest of moments.
So you see, these stories aren't just tragic anecdotes. They are evidence. They're all building towards the author's central concept, a powerful idea he calls the ancient character.
So what exactly did the author see? He saw that in a crisis, people defaulted to an ancient way of being. They accepted these awful tragedies without looking for someone to blame, because for centuries, that's how their ancestors survived, through famines and droughts and plagues. And to have this ancient mindset in our modern world, where you can see incredible wealth everywhere, well, the author says that is a special kind of cruelty. So the ancient character, what is it? It's a worldview where hardship is just the baseline. It's not about being passive, not at all. It's a kind of deep, pragmatic understanding that fighting the system is usually just a waste of precious energy. So you endure, you find a way, and you carry on. Okay, and this is a really crucial point. The author is not saying the poor are saints or that they never commit crimes. Of course they do. There are robberies, there are murders that are born from sheer desperation. The real question, the bigger question, is why these individual acts don't ever seem to come together into a massive, organized, violent uprising against the system itself. So the author's conclusion, it doesn't really offer any easy comfort. There's no neat political solution here. Instead, it just leaves us with the question itself, just hanging in the air.
And here is that paradox, in full view. In our age of smartphones and TV, the poor can see the unbelievable wealth around them more clearly than at any other time in history. They see the fancy cars, the giant houses, the easy lives. And yet, they tolerate it. That is the central, haunting mystery.
And then the author turns the lens on himself. He remembers being in his 20s, totally oblivious to this huge inequality. And he reflects that if he had truly understood the disparity back then, he would have been the one to riot. And that admission just highlights this profound gap in perspective between those of us who expect a revolt and those who have simply learned to endure.
And so we're left with this final question that kind of turns the whole thing back on us. Maybe the expectation of a violent revolution is a modern, middle-class idea. Maybe it's a projection from us onto people whose entire history has taught them a completely different lesson, that survival isn't achieved through revolt, but through an ancient, almost unimaginable capacity for endurance. So the question really isn't just why don't they kill us, it's why do we, in our comfort, expect them to?